Good morning. Our text today comes from the Gospel of Luke. But I say to you, listen, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer them the other also. And from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who begs from you. And if anyone takes away your goods, do not ask for them again. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. But love your enemies. Do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High. For God is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. The word of the Lord. For those of us in this room as 21st century disciples, it's likely that at least for the next 4 days, we have food to eat and a place to lay our head. But let's take a moment and consider those first century disciples as they heard the Sermon on the Plain. We had been following Jesus for a short period of time. We'd seen him eat with tax collectors, claim to be Lord of the Sabbath, heal people. And after choosing those who would be sent out, Jesus began to say, "Blessed are the poor. Blessed are the hungry, suffering, and oppressed. These are the people God favors." He said, "Woe to those of you who are rich, overfed, pompous, and oppressive. These are to observe their position with distress." Those of us who are listening are people dominated by Roman authority. Many of us are poor, looking for our next meal, while the rich only seem to thrive on the current system. Many gods swirl about, each with some ailment to life. Our world is oppressive. And so we agree with Jesus. Blessed are the poor, the hungry, the suffering, and oppressed. And woe to you who are rich, overfed, pompous, and oppressive. But then Jesus makes eye contact with us as he says, "Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse. Pray for our abusers. Offer the other cheek. Recklessly give, and do unto others as we would have them do unto us." Jesus has just condemned the oppressors and lifted up people like us, the oppressed. This world is brutal. Yet Jesus expects us to follow, to be sent out with a pathetic love strategy. These first century disciples have left everything to follow and be sent out into the world. Jesus' first sections of teachings here seem very familiar. Of course, the poor, the oppressed, and the hungry are favored by God. And of course, the rich, overfed, pompous oppressors should observe their position with distress. But then Jesus begins to talk about love. And not love for the oppressed, but love for those who participate in systems of oppression. Love for those who cause oppression. Love for those who do not seek to end suffering, but those who benefit from it. The people being addressed here are poor. They are powerless people who have left their former lives following a religious rogue under an oppressive government who holds what is perceived to be the only path to social change. And Jesus has the audacity to recommend this pathetic love strategy. One can almost hear the disciples chanting, "Yes, God sees us, the oppressed, and woe to you who dare to oppress people like us, for God favors us." And then an audible sigh, a clench of the fist, and betrayed faces as Jesus utters, "Love your enemies." Why this pathetic love strategy for the brutal and oppressive world of the first century. With the end of 2016, many 21st century disciples are also questioning the power of love. How can a pathetic love strategy impact systems seemingly bent upon oppression? The year of 2016 contained deaths of infamous world leaders, contaminated water supplies, dangerously planned pipelines, sickly Summer Olympics, nuclear tests, police shootings, natural catastrophes that led to fatalities and property loss, terrorist attacks, a refugee crisis, tweets from Syrians begging for their lives, the United Kingdom leaving the European Union, and oh yes, of course, a United States presidential election. Many Christians and clergy have heard the words, love your enemy, do good, pray, offer the other cheek, give, and do unto others as you would have them do to you, but question such a pathetic love strategy in a world wrought with oppression. We too have heard that the oppressed are favored by God and that the oppressors must reevaluate their position, and we, like the disciples, agree. Blessed are those who protect sacred burial grounds, and woe to you oil tycoons. Blessed are the Syrian refugees, and woe to you who dare to keep them out. It's easy to identify ourselves as either being the blessed or, at the very least, being on the side of the blessed. As followers of Jesus, we're told that we must go out into the world and that we must love. But love doesn't seem to disarm those who play with bombs like they're toys. Doing good to those who write hate mail to affirming churches solves nothing. Blessing those who burn black churches does not build a new church or take away suffering. Offering the other cheek to those who spit on women entering abortion clinics does not wipe the spit from their faces. And giving to the overwhelming amount of people in poverty has not brought victory on the so-called war on poverty. Acknowledging the humanity of white nationalists seems to ignore the pain of our sisters and brothers of color. These are problems on a grand scale. Yet Jesus' love strategy seems pathetic even in our everyday social interactions. Love that family that left your church. Bless that parishioner who has an endless bucket of complaints about your sermon on Monday morning. Yeah, love. Love will take care of all of that. Love. Jesus' pathetic response to the disciples. Jesus' pathetic response to us is to love. Love seems powerless and useless in our brutal local and global environments. At first listen to Jesus' words, an appropriate response might be something like, Jesus, do you understand the world we live in? And you have the audacity to tell us to love. Yes, let's love those Roman soldiers. That'll take care of that, won't it? Yes, Jesus, let's give our inner and outer garments when we're just trying to feed ourselves. How is this an expression of favor to the oppressed? For people whose whole lives have been a story of oppression, soldiers everywhere, little money to be had, rigorous religious disagreement, being told to love, do good, bless, pray, turn the other cheek is a radical notion.
Yes. Come on now.
This way does not seem to rid the community of Roman occupation, offer the promise of safety, end suffering, or provide monetary gain. But it does light up the wrong and invite relationship. This strategy lights up what's wrong with violence by offering the other cheek. This process forces the attempted oppressor to look a person in the eye with the one that they wish to harm, to acknowledge the dignity of the person being harmed, and to invite relationship. This strategy lights up what's wrong when those who have nothing give open-handedly, while those who have far too much continue to take. Doing unto others means that Jesus' love strategy is a constant call for relationship. Jesus is not advocating for the disciples to accept abuse or condone oppression. Jesus just noted how important it is for prophets to expose injustice. However, Jesus' love strategy is not to run, and it's certainly not to strike back, because this does not open the possibility of relationship. Jesus' love strategy condemns oppression while offering freedom to the oppressors, living in the lifelessness of greed, violence, and domination. To say woe is not enough. Jesus' love strategy exposes oppression while modeling another way to live by lighting up the wrong and inviting relationship. We too like to say whoa, don't we? And it's no wonder in our world and communities that thrive on injustice, but this is not the way of Jesus. And the way of Jesus does not belittle or diminish the reality of pain and suffering. Instead, this strategy allows us to witness the illuminating and relational power of love. Consider the many tales of prodigal children. These tales usually involve a child who has forsaken everything, and it's a figurative slap in the face of their parental figure. After rolling with the swine in whatever fashion that might take, dry eyes are hard to find as a child comes stumbling down the road, as the parental figure rushes to hold the child, loving the person who took everything, slapped them, and counted them as an enemy. This strategy of love shows the depravity of the child who left, but embraces and begs for relationship. In 2006, Charles Roberts entered a one-room Pennsylvania Amish schoolhouse on a crisp October morning. Roberts demanded that 10 little girls in long black dresses line up against a chalkboard. Soon after, the air smelled of gunpowder and blood. Tears of grief, memories of what was, and talk of what could have been echoed on the nightly news. Only hours after the precious loss of life, a knock came on the Roberts family door as members of the Amish community came carrying casseroles and forgiveness. It's unjust that 10 little girls lost their lives. But this was not illustrated by hate, but by acts of love and giving from the Amish community as they extended a trembling, tear-soaked hand to the Roberts family. The civil rights movement often consisted of coordinated marches. These marches were an act of love in an oppressive world. Row by row, step by step, oppressors' eyes had to watch as pale and dark hands were tightly interwoven. Hymns echoed in the streets, and these marches forced those who were in favor of racism, bigotry, and oppression to see people of color as humans while lighting up the ills of racism, but still begging for relationship. These marches were inclusive of all, beckoning those who wished to hate into relationship. Jesus' love strategy, although seemingly pathetic, is actually quite powerful. Jesus' love strategy lights up the gross injustice of children being slaughtered and of racism. But even beyond naming such oppression, it invites relationship. Like the first century disciples, we too, friends, have been empowered by Jesus to say much more than woe. This strategy allows us to join hands and use the power of love to light up the injustice of gentrification by building affordable housing as we use the power of love to extend a hand of relationship to city officials and business professionals. This love strategy enables a Christian Iraqi mother to forgive the ISIS member who has decapitated her son. The strategy of love enables her not only to forgive, but to seek love because, in her words, hate will do nothing. And ultimately, it is Jesus' love strategy that allows all of us to come to the table as both the oppressed and the oppressor. And it's at this table we find the radical Jesus and his love strategy lighting up what is wrong, but banning none from the table, rather beckoning all into the merciful and relational network of God.